This week's episode of the Owl House was special, as not only was it a character-driven episode that followed up on Willow while fleshing out both Hunter and Darius, but it was also the storyboarding debut of our boy Mike Cat SU, or just as he's now credited, Mike Austin, longtime friend of the channel who used to do some thumbnails for us back in the day, now working in the animation industry on major titles such as the Owl House. Give our boy a hefty congrats, I'm immensely proud of him. With this being a more character-driven episode, our breakdown is going to be character-oriented, as I have quite a bit of observations to make. Now, unfortunately, there won't be a fan spotlight for our Owl House or Amphibia breakdowns this week, but don't shoot. We're either going to make sure the next ones are twice as long to compensate, or just put an extra spotlight in the next 30 videos we make for both shows. I've just been in the middle of a big move, and I still need to finish the big animation industry doc I've been working on, which has a lot of work left still. I just know if I did a spotlight this week, I wouldn't give it the attention it deserves. And I'm not gonna do that to you guys. The spotlights were already a bit shorter last week, so just hang tight. That being said, thank you for your patience, and let's dive in. At the Emperor's castle, Hunter is found in his room, fixing up his cape, sewing quite an interesting sigil into it. As according to Darius, this is the original sigil of the Golden Guard. After everything Hunter's been through lately, I interpret this moment as the boy rewarding himself for toughing it out and fulfilling Belos' request to bring him Titan's blood, in the form of the original key no less. And we can't forget to mention the Remy from Big City Green's plush behind Hunter, a character who shares the same voice actor as him, Zeno Robinson. Hunter's interrupted by the arrival of two guards at his door, handing him an invitation to Super Smash a letter from Belos, informing his nephew that he will be the one leading the Coven heads today, and that this duty should be considered a test. Unfortunately, one that he immediately fails, as the Coven heads are not in the mood to be bossed around by a child, opting to reschedule the meeting and give Hunter the cold shoulder. Rain is the only one to acknowledge Hunter, turning back with a look of sympathy. But Terra Snapdragon nips any possible interaction in the bud, keeping Rain in check just as she was assigned to. Now, the Golden Guard sigil looks familiar to you, as it does of Darius. It's because we've seen it before in yesterday's lie, on the sign that reads, "Welcome to Graysfield." Considering this is the town that not only Luz and Amity comes from, but Philip Wittebane and his brother, this sigil could have been something stolen by Wittebane when inventing the Belos persona, recontextualized in the demon realm to its present day meaning. And after all, the Golden Guard sounds like something that could come from a book series. So just as how Luz has borrowed a lot from the Good Witch Azura books into inventing her own persona as a witch, Belos doing the same and taking something from his childhood called the Golden Guard would very much check out. Either way, this definitely implies that the original Golden Guard is from Earth. At the very least, the concept. As for the identity of the original Golden Guard, while I think an easy conclusion would be someone related to Philip and his brother, possibly Del Clawthorne, whose commonalities with the Wittebane family are starting to pile up as of last week's episode, I have a different idea in mind, though one that might be a stretch. Darius remarks that the previous Golden Guard was his mentor, one of the strongest witches he's ever known. Darius seems as if he'd be in his 30s, maybe around Ida's age. So I would imagine this mentor being anywhere from 10 to 20 years older than him. And he couldn't have stepped down that long ago, given that Hunter is only 16. So hear me out. Is it possible the original Golden Guard could have been Luz's dad? We're this far into the series, and there still hasn't been a peep from this guy. The man is still a complete and utter stranger. And given the depiction of a mysterious human in the first episode, when Ida explains the barrier in the Conformatorium, I am led to believe that there's a human character out there that we haven't met yet. Now sure, Darius' statement about this being one of the most powerful witches implies Luz's father wouldn't be human, but both Belos and Hunter were perceived to be proficient witches, only to use artificial magic, though it seems at the very least Darius is aware that Hunter uses an artificial staff. So as for the original Golden Guard being someone like Del, not only does this check out with the potential Wittebane connection, and thus why Belos would choose him as the Golden Guard, but Del's career path has only been vaguely alluded to, heading to the body of the Titan within Ida's flashback as seen in Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's door. So that could imply he worked for the Emperor, potentially as his right-hand man. It also explains why the original Golden Guard would be one of the best witches. After all, we see that before losing her magic, Ida was one of the best herself, same with Lilith. So having that run in the family just makes sense to me. Of course they're so good at magic. Their father was the Golden Guard. I don't know. I'm not saying either of these are the definitive conclusion, but drop your thoughts on these ideas in the comments below. Darius mocks Hunter for being the entitled brat he kinda is, checking him on his ego and status that was only handed to him because of his relation to Belos. Hunter is a case of tried and true nepotism, and for that, Darius wants him to earn the sigil, throwing out in jest that Hunter should find new recruits for the Emperor's Coven, which of course, the boy takes to heart as a serious suggestion. Elsewhere, Willow begins training for Flyer Derby, a new sport she's eager to get into, while Amity informs Luz that the author of the Good Witch Azura books is in town for a signing. Information that greatly confuses Luz, as she was under the impression the author was human. But lo and behold, Amity's copy from the Boiling Isles depicts that of a witch for the author, while Luz's copy from Earth depicts that of a human. And yeah, this Liberty subplot is pretty straightforward, so let's just tackle it all now. I suspect that, in spite of how elaborate the show's world building can be, the team of the Owl House didn't expect the Good Witch Azura books to gain traction as theory fuel. As early as the very first episode, a lot of fans, me included, were suspicious of how this book mirrored numerous people and events in Luz's life. I mean, some of these things felt way too coincidental, but alas, the team probably just thought it made sense for the book series Luz is trying to model her life by to resemble the characters and environments in the show. It's funny! So, they have this meta commentary side adventure, where Luz and Amity try to figure out how this author can coexist in two worlds. Luz stating that Mildred Featherwild did sound too delightful to be a real name. And yeah, Luz, you're probably right, it's called a pen name. And pretty much every suggestion that comes out of Amity's mouth has been a fan theory at some point. Does the author have her own portal to Earth? Maybe she's connected to Belos. Maybe she's secretly Benita. Maybe she's Luz's teenage mom from the future? Okay, what if that one is actually true? Yeah, I'm sure fans who stay in tune with the theory community have heard a variation of these before, even one on this channel. But after the signing gets canceled due to lack of interest, as Amity is the only witch who buys the books, Luz and Amity try to chase down the author, only to find out it's Tenella Noza.
Tenella Noza? She's had a name this whole time?
Which leads to a purposely anticlimactic reveal that the localization of the Good Witch Azura books is nothing more than the result of Tybalt's bootlegging it, having Bartholomew doctor the author photos on a set of Good Witch Azura books that washed up on the shore a year ago. Knowing what we know now of Titan's blood, that it's responsible for creating these portals between Earth and the Demon Realm, alongside Luz's conspiracy board from last week questioning if there could be more, I wonder if there's blood on Earth that's ripping open gateways between worlds as recent as a year ago. And if so, finding that Titan's blood may be a way to rope Camilla and V back into the story in a more direct way. I'm onto something, folks. I can feel it. But yeah, Luz accepts that the author wasn't a witch or anything crazy, just another human being with a wild imagination, just like her. Back at Hexside, Hunter's mission to find new recruits really highlights how out of touch he is with other teenagers his age, alongside how badly Belos and his ideals have warped Hunter's own outlook and values. He has no idea how to appeal to his demographic, bragging about sleeping in until 6, and almost goes into a state of shock when Gerbil questions why the Emperor's Coven has to be the only one that allows its members to practice all forms of magic. Gerbil aspiring to reform the system from the ground up one day. Considering Hunter's bias with wild magic that he adopted from Belos, I'm surprised the boy didn't faint right there on the spot. Meanwhile, Willow is having difficulty getting Flyer Derby approved, given that Professor Homunculus holds a grudge against her for dropping out of his Abomination class back in Season 1. Hey man, she had a more important class to get to. Character Development 101. So, she has to take matters in her own hands and find enough recruits to appease Homunculus. From here, it doesn't take long for Hunter and Willow's objectives to coincide. Hunter creating the alias Caleb Jasper Blood Williams from The Toes, which makes me question if that's the location on the Isles we'll actually explore soon. And the writers are just setting it up enough through a joke that the audience wouldn't think too hard about it. Gus also shows how great of an observationalist and friend he is, immediately picking up that he's never seen this Caleb fellow before. And then once Hunter agrees to join Willow's Flyer Derby team, Gus is quick to instigate, warning Hunter to not mess his opportunity up for Willow. Now, observation is key for Gus when it comes to creating illusions, keeping tabs on the people and objects around him in case he needs to replicate any of them, alongside the timing of when said illusions need to be made. something that we see front and center later in the episode when he creates an illusion to distract Darius. Hunter's initially unimpressed with Willow's recruits, leading to a pivotal moment in his character development. Remember what I said in my last few Owl House videos about Belos fostering a competitive system in which everyone in the Emperor's Coven are at each other's throats, working against each other instead of with each other, because they feel that ultimately only one person could truly earn his approval? This is explored further through both Hunter and Darius in this episode. And with Hunter, he's someone who feels as if chances should be earned, unwilling to give these recruits any more of his time. Just like Willow, Hunter is considered half a witch, for reasons out of his control. These words causes Willow to recognize Hunter's own insecurities, and how those insecurities have shaped his approach to situations like these. That he too has been misjudged, and it's affected him greatly, prompting Willow to stall just long enough for Hunter to see everyone get into the swing of Flyer Derby, pointing out each of their skill set and their advantages on the battlefield, which is all the convincing Hunter needed to reassure himself that these are the recruits he's been looking for. Everyone puts on face paint to get into the derby spirit, which leads to a familiar looking stripe on Hunter's. A stripe of face paint going over his eye that looks like the green scar on Emperor Belos' face. That's ominous. Though, whereas Belos' scar is more diagonal, Hunter's face down is mostly straight, so it looks like the scar on the eye of Del Clawthorn. Interesting. After Willow's team slays at the trial game, Hunter drops the act and reveals his mission was to find recruits for the Emperor's Coven. And honestly, this scene had me kinda jaw-dropped. I didn't expect him to just give it up like that. But it's a good reminder that Hunter is socially awkward, and as we can see, he definitely thought everyone was going to be on board with it, no problem. There's some wanted posters at the precinct, a two-faced demon named Poor Eddie, a short lady with a stick named Trash Noble, alongside a pile of skulls named Massive Skulls, which makes me wonder if any of these characters are actually gonna pop up soon, or if they're just Easter eggs to other series I don't recognize at the moment. Gus scolds Hunter, telling him friends don't backstab friends, to which Hunter replies, "Sure they do. The Covenants do it all the time back at the castle," which more or less confirms the same observation I've been saying, that toxic competitive behavior is very much the norm in the Emperor's Coven, and between all the Coven heads. They aren't friends, Hunter. They aren't friends. Darius picks up the gang against their will, and I love how this episode shows us a very different side to him than what appeared in Edith's Requiem. But let's put a pin in that, as Steve reminds Hunter how shitty it is to be in the Emperor's Coven, especially the recruitment process.
The duels, the mazes with the traps. That time we were left alone on a mountain?
And Hunter finally comes to his senses after Steve states their palisman will be confiscated. Hunter knows those palismen would end up dead, sacrifices for Belos, and is self-medicating. And now that he's deeply attached to one of his own, Little Flapjack being his first true friend, he can't stomach the idea of anyone else bearing that pain, especially those he just began to call his friends. Now it's time for him to learn what being a friend really means. Back to Darius, however, genius writing with this man right here. I don't want to assume my viewing experience was universal, but I believe it was intended for our expectations around Darius in this episode to be based off his appearance in Edith's Requiem, where he was self-absorbed, ruthless, and easily agitated with a seemingly short temper. He's over everything and everyone. So we're just left to assume that might be all to him, just a fun, pompous antagonist. But as the end of this episode reveals, there's a lot more depth to Darius as a human being. Which being? Whatever floats your boat. That demeanor he sported in Edith's Requiem is basically just how he conducts himself at work. Because unlike what Hunter thinks, the Coven heads aren't friends. They're co-workers, forced to put up with each other, and most of their relationships are superficial at best. Darius looks out for only himself because he knows everyone else. Darius looks around and sees that no one cares about the best interests of the world they live in. They just care about what Belos has to offer them. And before this episode, he just saw Hunter as a lost cause, someone who's wit for Belos' approval more than anyone else. Which saddened Darius because Hunter's just a teenager. He has his whole life ahead of him, but so much of his youth has been spent without any real friends, let alone anyone his age. I also imagine the original Golden Guard had to be a free spirit. For Darius to be so passionate about this, to have Hunter earn the mantle back. And for that mantle to be earned by sticking up for his friends? Come on! Which makes you question why Darius wouldn't be for a rebellion against Belos. But who knows? Maybe his remark to Kikimora that they didn't need help runs a bit deeper than expected. I also gotta know what happened between Darius and Alador for Darius to have that reaction to Alador's Pinstagram post. But yeah, the gang works together to land the ship as Hunter also intervenes to stop Darius from harming them, only for Darius to let them escape and reveal he's proud of Hunter's actions. Otherwise, he was just gonna drop them off at Hexside since they have more than enough recruits. Which again, shows Darius' true character. He may not be transparent of his intentions, but he does care. Darius also calls out Flapjack as Hunter's secret talisman, cluing Hunter in that they can keep a few things hidden from Belos. With Hunter finally in tune with his moral compass, Darius is confident that Hunter will make his predecessors proud. Darius returning and properly patching up Hunter's cape in the process. Hunter joins social media off screen and immediately slides into Willow's DMs. You already know the shippers are going wild, and Luz and Amity are thrown off guard at this revelation, shouting "what" into the sky, just as Skara and Amity did back in Hootie's Moving Hassle. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't it? And with that, the episode comes to a close. And as always, we want to know what you guys think. How did you feel about this episode? What are your thoughts on Darius and Hunter moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet them at Roundtable Vids and at OstrikVox. Give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable with notifications on so you never miss a video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya!